Walter Williams, we have this debate that goes on after these mass murders. And I'm watching the news with great trepidation. We're not really getting facts. We're not getting information. Or we get it initially, and then really the media turn on a dime, and we're in a debate about the Second Amendment. And what I'm noticing about this, really, this debate over the Second Amendment, I'm curious on your thoughts on this, is also a debate over the First Amendment. Gun control, but they also want debate control. Because people who dare to say, wait a minute, maybe localities ought to figure this out, maybe there ought to be police in the schools, maybe Washington doesn't have the answers, you want to outlaw weapons, there's other types of whatever. This kind of free-flowing debate, it's many of our universities, it's non-existent now, or it's limited. I'm noticing the more media we have, the more groupthink that's being promoted. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think that Americans need to be educated on why the founders of our nation gave us the Second Amendment in the first place. And they gave us the Second Amendment not to do duck hunting and not to do deer hunting and to protect our houses. They explicitly said they want us to have arms to protect ourselves against abuse of government.
And see, what you just said is true, factually, historically true, and yet it's crazy to the left and to the media.
That is absolutely right. But even another question about the gun control in terms of reducing the crime, you have to keep in mind that guns are inanimate objects. One can put a gun right here, and it can be there for a century, and it's not going to do anything. Now, the people who are arguing for gun control as a way to reduce the slaughter that we see in the United States, they're kind of saying with cars, 30 people are killed each day by drunk drivers in our country. So what do you want to do? You want to have car control, or it turns out that rifles kill roughly rifles and shotguns are used to kill about 550 people each year, according to FBI statistics. But in terms of knives are responsible for about 1,500 deaths a year. So what do you want? Knife control? I mean, if you use the same reasoning that people use about guns to cars and knives, you'd have background checks in order for you to go buy a knife, or background checks for you to buy a car. I think what we fail to realize is that what has happened to our society in terms of morality, and keep in mind that today it's more difficult to get a gun or a rifle than it has ever been in our country. That is, if you look in the Sears and Roebuck catalog of 1908, there are 35 pages of sales of guns. And what you do with the Sears catalog, you send your money and they send you out a gun. Or you can walk in the hardware store and buy a gun. Or for a long time, a birthday present for a 12-year-old or 14-year-old from his father was a .22 rifle. Schools had gun shooting clubs. And so you might say, what has happened to guns between 1920 and today? What are guns doing differently? Well, guns aren't doing anything differently. You have to ask the question, what has happened to people since the 1920s? And what there's been a decline in morality. And so this is what you find happening all over our country. And to say that we want gun control in order to protect our kids in the schools, that's just plain nonsense.
And yet it's being pushed. It's almost monopolizing the debate. And then I have to shut it off. I see guests who come on who have a different point of view, and they're shut down. I see at least one cable channel, CNN, had this event the other night with Marco Rubio and others who were shouted down because they don't go full gun control. The host used to work for one of the handgun control organizations. I was never told. Whether it's climate change or abortion, gun control, it seems to me we're always debating on the grounds and the terms set by the left. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, I think it's very popular. I think that the left is very, very effective at selling their point of view to the American people than the right or the libertarians or conservatives. That is, we're not as good with messaging as the left. The left appears so caring, and whereby the right does not appear as caring. And so what we have to do, we have to be able to sell the moral superiority of personal liberty and just morality in general. We have to do a better job of doing that.
Do you think there's enough of us left who are willing to do it? I don't see a lot of them in Congress, I can tell you that.
You don't see a lot of them on college campuses either.